All right, this week on the Critical Fools podcast, episode 44, we'll be discussing a film, 500 Days of Summer, directed by I think it's Mark Webb, yes. And this film aired in, I want to say 2009. Was my pick. We actually watched it where you're at because it's one of the few rom-coms I feel like actually, at least from a guy's perspective, really tackles a lot of themes about like dating and courtship and romantic relationships. And I thought it tackles on some interesting themes and through its story. And that's why it's a movie that's always sticking in my brain because like often I've seen so many rom-coms that just roll off my mind, but this one's always going to stick out because of its, I think, uniqueness in many ways. And I know you enjoyed it, so I'm curious to hear your thoughts initially of like, did it surprise you like when we watched it, like how good it was? And is there any like any place you want to start off? Because I don't think we have to go through the like every little detail in this one. I think we can talk about like the themes and like some of the cool scenes and stuff that happened, and then talk more about that.
Yeah, no, I mean this was a good film. In many ways it was different from your typical rom-coms. I didn't use as many cliches, but I mean, it's still in that same genre. So there were, some, but I think it was good, at least for us too, because we could sort of relate to some of the things that we're discussing, some of the scenes, right? Kind of like rethinking certain events about like, especially like, so the main character's name's Tom, but being in Tom's position, rethinking certain events and like replaying them in your head, like, what the heck is going on, and having that sort of like drive you a little nuts. So I think a lot of why I think we both like this film is sort of the relatability from it, from sort of a guy's perspective. And in many ways, you don't quite get that in typical rom-com. So that's what made this film kind of unique, is sort of focusing on the guy's perspective.
Yeah, we do. I do want to clarify that because I think it doesn't really tackle like the other side. But from a guy's perspective, like I mean, at least I've been there, right? Like you're overthinking something, or situations that
every dude has been there.
Yeah, every situations that you think are like, oh, like she's clearly like everything's for me, and then you realize when you take a step back that like, no, she's just being like courteous and nice. Even though there's a scene where there's a part where we're gonna get into it that like I did think that like, where like it's unfair on the guy, and that's when she goes to him with the wedding, if you remember later. That's a bit, it's misleading. That's a bit like
that was a little,
but that like, so we'll get there. But like basically in the beginning, right? He's like a hopeless romantic type, right? Which is a lot of guys, right? Like he's trying to find the right girl.
That's just a lot of people, period.
Yeah. Which I thought was funny is that he works at a greeting card place, even though he wants to be an architect. And that's funny too. There's some funny scenes about like how his mood, the greeting cards go from like, oh, really corny, cheesy to like depressing, but
very niche.
Yeah, but I think the film, like you said, we go back to because we're seeing from a viewer's perspective, right? So we go back to Tom and Summer, right? Even the beginning, right? And this happens too. I think maybe we're just older now, so we're less like, let's just say, naive. But like how in the beginning Tom is like he thinks that like he thinks just the initial. How do I say it? Like the initial connection in the elevator means it's destiny. Like there's a big theme of like he thinks like it's destiny and like this is meant to be and all that stuff. Even though some of the signals are like she's just looking for something like casual.
Yeah. And that's the whole point. And you could tell based on sort of the perspectives of the two main characters, that being Tom and Summer, it's that they both had different ideas of what they wanted in their head. And oftentimes what you see in relationships like this, at least with people I've like known, is that there tends to be a disconnect in terms of like establishing what each person sort of like wants. Well, Tom puts in his head that he's okay with something casual, and in reality, he's not. And you can see that coming a mile away, right? Because he's like head over heels for Summer, and this thing was going to end badly. And that's part of the issue. And with Summer is that she was honest with him, but then there were signals that kind of like showed kind of otherwise, and so that's what makes like this sort of situation a little murky and a little hard. And then Tom clearly he wants more. It's just not happening, and you could see it. And at least I knew in the mind. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I've seen this happen in real life before. This is not going to end very well.
Exactly. Also, the movie tells us in the beginning, right? This is not a happy
Yeah.
ending, right? Like this is not gonna be
Beyond that, I mean, these are it's sort of a cliche storyline, but I mean, it's rooted in like a lot of people's sort of real life experiences.
exactly like you said, like the expectations were different, and then like what I've realized, and I guess just maybe because of age, is that like some people just get into things just because like why not versus like oh I want this. So like
You're talking about convenience.
yeah, convenience. So it's like in Summer's point of view, like we don't get her point of view in this film. It'd be great to find a movie that may had a different angle.
Sort of a follow up. Yeah.
Yeah, and like you see that like she I'm gonna take a guess here, a logical guess that like maybe in her mind it was just like, oh, this guy is like pretty, cool. He's not like, a creeper or weird, and like, why not, But like in her mind, like she didn't, like you said, like was never gonna be anything beyond that, right? Even though in Tom's eyes, he thought this was the love of his life,
Mm-hmm.
And we'll connect to the end too, because there's an interesting scene with Summer and Tom at the bench. But staying in the beginning, like I think like that early energy dynamic was funny because not just he falls head over heels, but like I also like because we're guys, so I also like the friend banter.
The friends are hilarious in this movie.
Yeah, I know the hilarious.
Oh, yeah.
Like, in there, like I mean, honestly, we were just earlier we were sharing some other stories off the side.
It's hilarious, dude.
It was also like similar in the tone of.
No,
like,
I mean when you see like those two dudes, it's like okay, yeah, like
I've been there. I've
most
been
dudes. Yeah, you've either been the dude in that point or the friend, and it's just funny. What was hilarious was when they're like both giving advice and be like, "What are you stupid?" And he's like, he tells his friends at one point, "Screw you. When was the last time you were in a relationship?" And the other dude, you've been with the same girl for like 80 years. So
yeah,
like, who are you to comment on like mine? He's like basically he's like, you guys can't comment on my situation because you have completely different like perspectives from me. And I was like, oh, that's kind of true. It's like, yeah, I was like, they're judging this dude. I was like, but they just can't relate to him because they're in completely different situations.
Yeah, but
at the same time, some of their advice is like spot on. That's what's fun.
Especially later. When,
but he's not going to listen to them because in his head. Because I've been at that point of being one of the friends and be like, dude, this is what you should do. I'm like trying to look out for you. And then I've had people tell me, I'm not going to do that. I'm like, well, it's going to end badly. And then they have to learn. And that's just how it is.
Yeah, that's how it is. I mean, Tom learns too, but like it is funny because like he has a good point, and then like his friends give him legit advice like later, and he just can't accept it, But it's
yeah, of course.
But yeah, I just find it funny because you're right. When I saw that scene, I was just like, yeah, you're right. I've been the guy or I've been the friend. This is great. I mean, this is definitely a rom-com for guys, I will say. So like, I definitely like clicked with it because if you're just a normal dude, not like one of the, let's just say, creepers or disparaging personalities, like you've just been there where you're trying to walk this fine line of like,
and then you're trying to make sense of things that happen in your head. Like sometimes you overanalyze signals, or like, what the hell did she really mean by like this, like something she said, and it can like sometimes you just overanalyze certain shit.
Yeah, and I'm definitely an overthinker. That's my style, so I'm trying to work on that. But yeah, I've been there. So for me with Tom, I was like, I think I would have definitely done things differently. But I definitely have been there when I've overthought things, and I'm like, no, there was
who hasn't? I'm sure for like females, they've done the same thing with dudes. Even though I would say dudes tend to be pretty street. Well, no, that's not true. It depends on the dude.
I think it depends. I just think in general, what happens with like. And this is something, again, that's why this movie is a good conversational platform, is that like I think what happens a lot of the time is like, I think my message for the audience is like, I think men have to give themselves a break, like, in the sense of like, if she's friendly, there's completely nothing wrong with you thinking that like she's in like kind of like wouldn't mind dating you. Like I think you just gotta give yourself a break. Like I think like it's totally fine to just like get it wrong, but just like at least you're trying.
So the thing I will say, it's like, and we've discussed this before. It's like, just how sort of society is structured. It's like the dudes are the ones that are supposed to, put in the first move and effort. And sometimes it's tough, right? Because you can misread things, and you're just like, and you might offend like a female, but you're not necessarily trying to. It's just you misread something. Sometimes it's like, as a dude, you feel like, well, it'd just be much easier if like a female made the move, but most don't want to do that.
Yeah, and it's not.
And so it creates like a difficult dynamic.
Yeah, but it does, and I think like obviously Tom gets with Summer, but like, let's say this movie took a different turn, it didn't work out. Like, you can't really blame, Tom. Like, he was getting, I would consider, good signal, but like
mixed signals, mixed.
Yeah.
No, because he thinks he's getting good signals the whole time. And then later on in the film, he revisits some things and be like, oh, yeah, I should have seen that. Like, there are many flags. It's just Tom decided to overlook them.
Yeah, he overlooked
right.
them.
It was like that BoJack quote, and it's great. Like, they have some very sharp, poignant lines. It's like when you're sort of head over heels for someone, all the red flags, and you're wearing rose-colored glasses. All the red flags just look like flags, and there were plenty. He just didn't want to see them or didn't look at them with the right lens during the time. It's just it's kind of like only after. I mean, we've been there where it's like sort of play back certain things in your head, and then you have time away from sort of the situation. You look back, it's like, yeah, what I thought was going on, that's not really what was happening.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, I remember that those sequences, that was about like him in the relationship. He thought it was a lot better than it was.
Mm-hmm.
But before we get in there, I was just talking about like the courtship aspect, just to wrap it up, is that like, a lot of the times just guys are like, they're confused because like they think like friendliness might mean like genuine like attraction, but it's just the luck of the draw or a bit of gray area, because it doesn't like it's like the Quadmender says that it doesn't necessarily mean that she is into you, but also doesn't mean that she's like not, right? It's like one of those things. So
it's hard to decipher sometimes. Like, it's why these relations, they're just it's hard to decipher at times. That's just part of the nature of it, which is why I think on both sides people wish that there was a little more clarity from the other person to try to make some of the confusing aspects less confusing. But the one thing I will say with this film that I really did like, which is a unique touch, is sort of the flashback and flash forward. Yeah. So they'd go start from, say, day one, go to day like 490, and it's just interesting because it's like, whoa, this is like completely different parallels, and something happens, and finally those timelines sort of converge. I really like that aspect of sort of this movie. Yeah,
because it's trying to show you that a relationship, whether that's a friendship or a romantic one, like there's twists and turns, and like
but it's just interesting because it's
beginning don't like there are different challenges in the middle and the end, right? So
they took a non-linear approach with this film, which I think worked very well for it.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so let's go into. So we talked about the beginning. They were coworkers. They
both worked for a time at the greeting card company.
That's I'm gonna ignore some of all the little minor scenes where they were funny. But what did you think of like when they're in the relationship, like that dynamic with Tom and Summer?
I mean, it's interesting, right? Because you're seeing things again through Tom's lens, right? And I think I've definitely been there where it's like, oh man, everything is great, everything's going well, right? And you're in that spot where like he's definitely like in love, but you don't quite know how, and everything seems to be going well at the beginning, but it's still, even though he thinks that there's like something more, it's going towards something more, but it's still casual, and she lets him know that, but in his mind, it's kind of weird, and this is where I think I do put some of the, like, it's hard to put blame because there's blame on both sides. But for Summer, she should have kind of cut it off or found someone who could, like, clearly Tom is not the type of dude who could handle just having a casual relationship, especially not with her. And there were many signs where she should have probably cut it off and, found someone else who could handle that kind of casual relationship. If that makes sense. Like sometimes you see it, like at least in my personal life, you see it with like other people. It's like, dude, it's like it's better to cut off now, otherwise you're gonna hurt this person.
Exactly. I know what scene you're talking about because like they have this fight and then she comes in the rain.
When I saw that, I was like, no, stay home. No, don't do this.
I watched it with you. That was interesting. That's also another thing, like for the audience, like this is the first time that we are gonna watch.
No, that's what up to that point.
To see you grimace, I was like, I knew you're gonna grimace here because I know your philosophy. I was just like, you're gonna be like, no.
I was like, you're gonna hurt him. See, but I've known people on both, like who've been in both genders on both sides that have like probably like been in a like casual relationship with someone longer than they should have, and someone got hurt. It's like, dude, just cut it off, man. Find someone else who is okay with this sort of situation. Like, Not everyone can handle a casual relationship.
Yeah, it's tough. Like you said, like I'm gonna quote you once.
Well, because you catch feelings, man, and then all of a sudden
I was gonna use your line, like you always say, like you catch the feelings, you know?
No, some people do. I might be most people, but I know some people that can do it. They can separate that, but it's hard. Not everyone can.
Yeah, I don't know if I could do it, but honestly, I'd probably catch the feelings eventually. So.
Yeah. I think for a lot of people they do, and that's my point. And it's like, well, if you want that kind of situation, like relationships are weird. If you want that kind of situation, find someone or like find someone who's willing or okay with that. Don't try to lead someone on is basically what I'm saying. I was like, this is not cool.
Exactly. Yeah,
and that's when Summer came on the scene, I was like, you're making him think there's still a shot, and there's not. And that's just going to mess him up more.
Exactly. Okay, so there's a couple of things I want to pick apart. There was that scene where she talks about her exes and how she's like she goes through them pretty quickly. I know you had some comments on that, how like that should have been a signal of like.
Wait, repeat that.
Remember, there's that scene where Tom he talks to Summer.
Oh yeah.
She goes through all her exes and explains.
Yeah, red flags, bro. Red flags all over the place.
For some reason or another, different reasons, but underneath it was like the same core reason. Like it just, it was like a
Just getting too much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's one of the things. It's like how one of the questions you should ask somebody is like, how many exes you had and like how long were you in these relationships for? So exactly. Give you a little insight of their stability, of their like sort of place in mind.
And then there's another scene that like I thought was one of my favorite scenes. So like they're doing this like one-on-one interviews with the friends, right? And one of the friends of Tom says like, my girlfriend is, I forgot how, I'm gonna paraphrase poorly, but he says like, my girlfriend is like, better than the girl of my dreams because she's real. I thought that was a really interesting like.
Oh, that was him. Yeah, she's flawed. And what did he say? He's basically like, she's flawed. She's not perfect, but she's better than like whatever I can imagine. Because it's sort of cliche, but it's kind of like oh my gosh, in Good Will Hunting, when Robin Williams is talking about his wife and what he misses most, and talks about like how the imperfections are what he misses the most, right? Because it was real. It was the same thing. It's like those are little things. It's like that make you laugh. The sort of takes or whatever. Those sort of imperfections are what you miss most about the certain person.
Yeah. So what's interesting is that this relates to just something I just read this week, even though we watched the movie like months ago. Mm-hmm. Is that this I want to say psychologist. I think there's a study that he did that was like why do some he basically his papers basically says that he can prove in like 15-20 minutes after an interview if
it's going to work well.
Yeah, and he says that the core reason is something that you just said, like I'm gonna use your language versus the scientific language, but like basically if you accept your partner's imperfections, like you're someone who does accept, both people do.
Some people you meet people who like that just like the imperfections drive them nuts. And it's like, well, that's not going to go well. Whereas like certain things because
the problem over time that just like
it amplifies.
Amplifies, it bubbles up. And so he says like, given, how, if he's able to figure that out, he says he can with certain questions.
Send me that interview or wherever you found that. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I found it from one of that YouTuber that you said has issues. The chick. The one I sent you, remember? She's like, she had that episode with her boyfriend on the airplane.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
She does content like that. So she pulls out studies and stuff. So I subscribed to her.
Well, my issue with her was that she's being a little passive. Aggressive.
Well, I mean, she's human, right? I think we'll all have to like remember that.
But I don't like that when you should have that discussion privately, not publicly. That was my big issue.
She had it privately first, I bet, hopefully.
Did she say that, or are you assuming?
I'm assuming because she's like
don't assume. You know what they say? Don't assume.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Anyways, but I defend. I'm an ally, so.
What does that have to do with like keeping conversations public or private?
I just wanted to trigger you. Yeah. Anyway,
it has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
I know. But anyway, so let's see. Oh, that's another interesting thing. Something I want to get your thoughts on. So, do you remember when that scene where they watched The Graduate and Summer cries after the movie?
Yeah, I'd never seen The Graduate, so I was at a little loss as to like what they were trying to portray there within that scene? Because she had a reaction and he didn't.
Yeah, so I've seen it. Maybe we should watch it in the future. I'm still kind of perplexed because I have some theories, but I don't really, not really 100% either. Or the one theory I have, like, basically, The Graduate is the story of like a young man, I forgot if he's a teenager or a young man or whatever, like college age, but like he gets with his girlfriend's or a girl that he's really interested in, and he ends up marrying at the end of the spoilers, ends up marrying at the end's mother.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like was that love, was that just lust? Like, it's still unclear, like, after watching it once.
Mm-hmm.
But like the end of the movie, like they get married, and then the last very scene is like they go from happy to just like the reality hits them. So I couldn't tell if Summer was like impacted emotionally because he thought like the guy should have been with the older woman, and because of the just societal constraints they couldn't. That's my number one theory. Or the fact that like maybe he was like stuck in a marriage that maybe in the long run doesn't work out because of the circumstances of how it happened, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, maybe we will watch that movie in the future and then we can connect it back to here. I'm still not sure, but it's a scene that stands out, right? Because like she has a strong reaction, and Tom's like, "What?"
He doesn't, or he doesn't have the same reaction she does, and he's confused by her reaction.
And I think what the film is trying to show us, not tell us, is that, to your point, that like
there was a disconnect.
There's a
between
disconnect. Them. They're not on the same page emotionally on some things, and I think that again leads to the big breakup. You know.
Sure. Now, why she had a reaction, I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe we'll revisit that movie. It's a good movie, so maybe in the future I'll keep it in the queue.
Yeah. Dude, the thing scene, it was just brief, that cracked me up is like when, you know, Tom is clearly depressed, and he's still on the point where he's not over Summer, and Summer's not there, but he meets greeting card companies, and they're all horrible, right? Like, just very nihilistic. And he's like, dude, I get like you're hurting or whatever, and I'm gonna take you off of like the happy greeting cards. I think yours would be very good for like a funeral. And I just cracked up. I was like, this guy. I was like, this is heartless, dude. He wants to just exploit his pain.
Yeah, make the money.
Oh man, that scene cracked me up.
So Tom's little sister is also a great comedic relief too.
Oh yeah.
She was just like
giving advice, a 13-year-old giving advice, and she's talking about her like relationship, like she's the wise one.
Yeah,
I was like, okay,
letting it rip, dude. I loved it.
She's the one who's like lived all the years, man, of like middle school. It's just like, okay, this is pretty funny.
It was funny. I thought she was funny. I thought she did a great job. It was funny.
Uh-huh.
So let's go back to a more serious theme, where like the wedding.
Sure.
So obviously, context here is that.
It was a coworker.
Yeah, but they break up.
They meet on the train. Yeah, no, they haven't seen each other in a long time.
And then they go to the wedding.
They see each other on the train.
Yeah. Oh, that's what it is. Yeah. Then they end up going to the same wedding. What did you think of like whole dynamic? And obviously, I think it hurt Tom because.
Of course, because it was far, like, enough time had passed where he started to move on, but not enough time where he was completely over it. And so, like, he saw her, and that just triggered it, because you could tell he was still kind of hoping. And, yeah, it just wasn't great. Because it brought back some of that vibe, the feelings of, like, when they were together. And it kind of gave Tom that sense of false hope. And clearly it did. And it wasn't... When you see, like, Summer, the way she was acting, she kind of, like, fed into that, too, which was not great. She should have just cut her off, and they should have just, like, been cordial with each other.
Yeah, because I think this is actually maybe...
Because she after that wedding, right, the wedding scene, she invites him to that party at her place.
Yeah, and that's, I think, the best sequence of the film, right? The whole juxtaposition of, like, what he thinks...
Oh, when they have that parallel scenes, and they're like... Ideally, what he wants to have happen versus reality. It's like, what's in his mind, reality.
Or what he wanted, like you said, what he wanted to happen would actually happen. It's, like, brutal. Yeah. Like... He wanted to be there, life of the party.
Expectations and reality.
Yeah, the kiss on the cheek.
Yeah, it was great. Like, what he wanted was, like, the kiss and then the hug.
He was really alone most of the party, not really talking to people. I was just like, man.
It's brutal. It's brutal.
I was like, this is a good film. I'm like, damn, brutal, dude. Because we've all been there.
That was a very unique way of portraying that, and I thought it was super effective. I haven't seen a film used that kind of juxtaposition before, but it was great because it's like, oh shoot, everyone can relate to that on some level at some point in their life.
Yeah, it goes
what
back
they
to
wanted, what they expected, and then what actually happened.
Yeah, for good or bad, like good situations are bad, right? How you perceive yourself isn't always how others perceive you, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's either in good light or bad light. Like he thought, like, oh, I'm gonna be there, I'm winning her back, I'm the man, and then the reality is that like she was engaged, and that was a brutal reality I had to accept. You know, that was probably his rock bottom. Yeah, because he was there, he thought like he was gonna basically win her back. That was what was in his head, right? Because he had such a great dynamic at the wedding. Now, moving forward to my other, I think the second most powerful scene is the bench scene, actually, because I think there's a lot.
Oh, when they see each other again.
Yeah, to me, there's a lot of themes there. One is like
at that point he started to move on, though.
Yeah, because so we skipped a little details. Like he reaches this rock bottom, and then he realizes that like, you know what, I don't want to be a greeting card person. He quits. He's pursuing his architecture, dream
career.
Architect. Yeah. Because remember, he takes her to that bench spot because it's his favorite spot in LA.
Yeah.
Because of like, the view and also like just the buildings you can see. And he knows
the architecture.
He knows all the history of the buildings. And I think one of the themes that I like about this bench scene is that it shows you that even bad, like relationships that end poorly, you can learn.
They have some good moments too.
Yeah, they have good moments, but you also can learn something from it, right? Like, so what Tom gets out of it is that like, Summer mentions it throughout the film, right? Like,
it catalyzed him to move on.
Yeah, like why don't you pursue your dreams? Like, why are you doing this greeting card thing? Like, you shouldn't do this. Like Summer is like it's that's what I like about the movie. Right?
It had a positive. It was both good and bad, which is whatever.
Like what I like about this movie is that Summer is obviously not, like you said, innocent, but like you could tell that she
had some positive effect on him and some negative.
She cared for him as a fellow human. She just couldn't marry him, right? So it's like that's tough too. But like it's like because she said some things throughout the
Oh man! So what I will say, what we skipped over is that part when you see the juxtaposition and then he notices the ring on her finger.
I thought I mentioned it.
No, you didn't.
That's when he hits rock bottom. Yeah, like we see like she's gonna be married, and I'm gonna touch upon it.
And then, oh man, that was a great conversation. Like, why couldn't that be? You said that you never wanted to get married. Why couldn't that be? She's like, it happened. She's like, I didn't plan it, I didn't expect it, but it happened. It's like, no one. It's unpredictable. You may go in, like, I mean, I know people who. Honestly, that like things started casually and then they progressed, and eventually they're like they've been dating forever and are getting married. Things happen, like you're just not expecting it necessarily.
Yeah, or the other way where they're dating for 5 years and they don't. But what she said
like 8 years, or 8 or 9 years, or 5 years, 6 years, and you get broken up, and they're like, "What the hell happened?"
Yeah, but remember Summer's words though. Like she says, like I focus on the good stuff that Tom got out of it. But Summer tells Tom, like, being with you, I started realizing that maybe there's something magical about like just love. And so she said, like, I met this guy in a coffee shop. We just started talking. Everything just clicked. Because she said she was surprised too. If you rewatch.
Yeah.
And she says,
that's
like,
what I'm saying.
She's like, something you told me, like when you know, and it's like. For Tom,
she's like, I knew at that point. Yeah,
it must have been
because he wanted her to know him.
Yeah, but it wasn't him. And there's a lesson in that too, I think, for the audience. That like sometimes you
can't force it.
It's not you. It's just
situation,
luck, destiny, whatever you want to call it. Like
timing, everything.
But don't be down on yourself. Like it just means that you'll be somebody for somebody else. It's a bit cheesy, but that's what I got.
That's what they got. Yeah, it's cheesy and cliche, but there's truth to that. As long as you're open to that, so that's the one thing. It's like I don't think Tom was in the position to be where he necessarily wanted at the beginning of the film, but eventually, like, he moved on, he grew, he pursued his architecture. He got out of his sort of depression, was working on, that whole term, which is sort of stupid because I think it gets used in the wrong context a lot of the time. But working on yourself, in many ways, he was working on himself, but in very positive ways that sort of helped him in dating, which ended up happening. He moved towards his architecture, and he got an interview, and he met someone that ended up being like his one. But you don't know that. You don't know that, but potentially. My whole point is like working on himself in that context and within his career. It put him in positions to have better outcomes.
Exactly, to meet new people, to just be like engaging it. Because I think,
and my whole issue with that whole thing of working on yourself often is just too vague.
Yes,
and you don't put it doesn't lead you to be in
it's not always positive either. But I think I thought what was profound too was that Summer tells like Tom, like in the bench scene too, that like she feels like she was only able to be open and be willing to marry this new guy because she says it like
she learned and grew, and sometimes people don't, and that's the whole issue. And sometimes I feel like it's great when you take something away and you come out positively from like something of your past, but sometimes people don't, or they become bitter.
Exactly, or jaded, or cynical. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you see both sides. It's really how you spin it, how you take it away. That's why sometimes, like, it's great, like when you learn things, but sometimes people serially date too around where it just becomes bitter and toxic, and it's just not good for your sort of long-term look.
Exactly. And I think with like Summer, like the key thing I got out of it too, and I think this is to Thomas' credit, right? She says like, because he was such a romantic, it got her to like think, well, maybe there's something to this, like you said, like it's just weird, like destiny. I go back to that, like, if she does deal with Tom and see like, wow, this guy's really like devoted, like, it wouldn't have clicked in her brain when she met this mythical new guy, right? Which is still tough for Tom, but like you said, like it's not like life is nuanced and murky, right? I'm gonna quote you again.
It's unpredictable
because you're always right, But
I'm not always right, but okay. There's no magic formula.
I think we covered all the points I wanted to. I don't know if there's any scenes that you want to go back and revisit.
I'm trying to think. No, I mean, this is not a very complicated story. It's just one that's it was very real many times when you see like certain things, like him getting hung over, having emotional outbursts, being like wanting to quit, being in despair. Just have that feeling of having your stomach turn because things aren't going quite the way you want.
There's also that scene where he goes on a blind date and he keeps talking about his ex.
Oh yeah, it's like, this is cringe.
And actually, I look back now, my own situation. I won't say names, but you know about really well. I should have. I had to get over the hump because I didn't want to deal with this anymore because I was becoming. I was coming to a new role at my company, and I had to just close the door. But now, when I'm like I said, 2020, the fact that said person kept talking about,
their
ex a little bit, and how like, oh, I blocked them, and like, I didn't want to be stalked. But it's like you're still talking about. It's like. That should have been a big flag. You're not really over that. Yeah. But now it's like new horizons for your boy, though. Yeah. Because men of
again, putting yourself in positions.
Putting yourself in positions to score, exactly. I mean, to shoot or whatever the analogy we use.
No, just putting yourself in an opportunity to meet new people. It's pretty much
exactly. But I look back now and I realize that. I wasn't wrong for what I thought, but like, there was, I think the leap would have been too much for the person at the time.
No, I honestly, I just thought the way that the movie ended was good because at a certain point you could tell Tom was like, things are going well. And he's like, should I take my chance? Should I take a shot? Because things seem to be like clicking well with a person who was going up with the job interview. And he's like, what do I have to lose? And it worked out for him. At least in terms of just going to coffee. Exactly. So who knows if that would lead.
That's going to be my strategy with
coffee.
Yeah, like hopefully we'll see. I'm going to be in California, so hopefully I can see her in January or something. We'll see. I'm optimistic again. So yeah.
Put yourself in positions, right?
That's how I survive my career. Dude. Put myself in positions to bet on myself. That's all my motto. So yeah.
You don't have to go for that Hail Mary all the time. It's just a couple of 10-yard outs. Put yourself in better positions.
Yeah, but get like the deep ball. I'm down like 3 scores. Dude. I'm gonna make it all back by scoring like 2 touchdowns in 3 minutes.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Was there anything that we really missed within this film? I mean, it's not linear.
There's a lot of little
things. I mean, like how they had the initial connection with the Smiths. Right, I mean, but that's kind of cliche. It was just something that they drived over, which is music.
There's also that friend scene. Remember at work, he's just going off on like the typical, like you even said, like, does this sound like your friend? Like he's so jaded, like, oh, but she's like, dating with all these other guys and stuff, and she's like,
the karaoke. That's the other scene that was cracking me up. The karaoke when his boy his coworker gets so drunk, and he tells him, "Hey, he really likes you." I was like, that was so funny. Oh man! So that was the one thing is like karaoke is just funny because people just get trashed, and it's funny to see people think that they're really good singers and they're really not at some karaoke bars.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was hilarious because I was like, this guy was just being the drunk wingman.
Yeah, he was actually a decent wingman. He was like he.
No, that was good. That was good because it broke it. What?
Yeah. Last part was I don't know if I would do that, but
which one?
Just like say like, oh, he likes you, like you.
Well, he was too drunk.
Yeah, but he was. But he's one of the funnier guys. At work, there's that scene where like he's just going off like before like that the karaoke.
Oh yeah.
Just, like, so she's like whatever, and it's like and you remember
you're like man,
it's not like your friend. Dude. I was just like yeah, kind of.
Because we both know dudes who are a little too jaded. It's like bro, it's not. I was like your view's wrong. Just do what you can. Again, put yourself in better positions. Work on yourself, but in positive ways that are tangible.
Exactly, and also like don't take it so personal. Like if you just
yeah,
if you met a sort of situation, as long as it's not like really bad where like you were getting nothing, then you're just dumb. But like if you thought like there was banter, there was some good vibe, like there's nothing wrong.
Yeah, but oh man, yeah, it was just funny. Yeah, because we both heard people who are just jaded say stupid things like that.
I know I have friends like that, so
yeah,
and I have other friends that have turned to the dark side, and
trying to work on it. But anyway, well, aside from that, I thought it was a good movie, especially like with some of the directorial choices of presenting this film non-linearly and having some sort of mashup scenes. I thought there were some really good creative choices they took in this film.
Yeah, and like I said, the reason I remember when I was visiting you in your place, why I said like we should watch it, and I pushed for a little bit, is because like
we watched it.
Yeah, it's the one rom-com where I go. Me, I'm pretty hard on rom-coms. I'm like, okay, they're so like, cookie cutter and like whatever. Mm-hmm. But this is the one.
This wasn't. It was a little different.
Yeah, it's still a rom-com, like you said. It still got its cliches, but it's for as I guess as a guy, I would say like it's very relatable because like I'm not like I feel more akin to Tom than I do like a different characters in other sitcoms or shows that like Seinfeld, right? Like, he's always like dating whatever. It's like I'm not like that, And Tom is more of like closer to like my experience of like, do I do it? Do I not do it?
Yeah, it's just funny because it's just like it's funny because we basically been saying like what Tom goes through is falling in like this is kind of cliche, but falling in love with like the idea of the person rather than after he takes some time like actually falling in love with the actual person because he like reflects and like how we thought her like the image that he made her out to be is not necessarily like who she was. I think that was part of the issue. Yeah,
and I think something that I've done more of my last 3 or 4 years is that like I try to protect try to stop myself from doing that. Going like I really don't know anything concretely until I know somebody over time. Like I think we tend to do that too much, right? We tend to
you're trying to build this person up in your head.
Yeah, and then you see that like this person. I try to remind myself all the time that we're all just people, and all people have different stories and experiences. So
sure.
And you just have to find the right puzzle for you, like the right.
What I will say with this film is, man, this was sort of the catalyst for like the careers of these two actors. Like they've done so much since,
especially for Gordon-Levitt, he's great.
Yeah, even Deschanel. I mean, she right after this, right? She started New Girl, and that was a breakout.
I've seen New Girl. I've seen New Girl, but I think her problem is that like she's kind of archetyped to this character because New Girl and this.
Right. No, but it still led to that opportunity and. Yeah. Like it was widely popular. Like it wasn't quite my favorite show, but it was widely successful.
So what's interesting is that I didn't like New Girl initially, and then I just kept at it, and it grew on me a little bit. But it's not really my favorite sitcom. But it's like not. It's actually.
But what I'm saying is, this was like their big break.
Yeah, especially for Gordon-Levitt, who was like now a rock star. So.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's get into final thoughts and ratings. I guess you'll go first.
Oh, hold on. So just real quick, I was just looking at Deschanel's career. I didn't realize she was in Almost Famous.
Yeah, she has like a little cameo.
Yeah, I don't remember that. It was interesting because we also watched that film pretty recently.
I forgot where it is, but I think she's like in one of the party scenes.
Yeah, probably. Well, anyway, that was sort of an aside. But so I thought that this film was pretty good. It was a different take on your typical like rom-com, like you were saying. I like a lot of the creative choices that the team took with this film. which I've echoed several times. I thought the acting performances were great. I thought Deschanel like really nailed her role as with Summer. I thought the same thing with Gordon-Levitt. I think it's because like they played so well and we could really relate to at least Gordon-Levitt's character. And so that made this film like really enjoyable because of there's a simplicity, there's a relatability of this film. We've been several of the characters at different situations in our lives. I think you would agree.
100%.
And so that relatability obviously gave, at least in my opinion, led to some bias within probably like both of our ratings. But personally, I'd give this.
No, go ahead.
I'd give this film a 9.
Yes,
because of the rewatchability. I'll be quiet. You can never fully account for your bias.
Yeah, I'm gonna do it right now with my score.
You're gonna try to. Okay, let's see.
All right. So sorry. You finished? You want
9.
to keep going? Or? Okay, 9. Any more thoughts, or can I jump in?
No, go ahead.
Yeah. So I agree with you that I thought the film was very relatable. I think unfortunately it's too male centric. Like it's only from a guy's perspective, but maybe it's constrained by the only 2 hours.
Okay, but why they didn't have to give necessarily the female perspective in this?
I think the film could have been an next level if it did that.
In what way?
It would have been interesting to see like Summer's perspective on the situations with Tom. Like there maybe there are things that like freaked her out or things she liked or how she evolved too. But I think it's tough.
But you kind of see that too. But you can't fully dive down into 2 people's lives within this.
It would have been interesting to do that if they could do that. Now I think a different director maybe could have taken on that challenge.
But I think you would have lost some aspects if you did that. Anyway, I'll let you go.
Yeah. It's all good. So that's one aspect. The other aspect too is I think also one could argue that and maybe it's by design, but like Summer, like I said, okay, well I'm gonna move on from that because we kind of touch upon like how Summer's like we don't get too deep into her psyche and stuff. One could also argue that Tom is like he's sort of interesting, but also he's kind of like a fill-in, right? I think the reason this movie works very well is because we're able to relate to Tom because he's like his experiences like we've probably experienced ourselves. But like when I think of Tom as like a character, like it does seem like he's kind of like cookie cutter generic, so we can fill in us the audience.
I think that's the point.
Yeah, I personally I don't really like that sometimes. I believe like characters should have some more depth and richness, because I'm a very artistic guy. But that's gonna be one we're gonna disagree because I'm gonna get to my score. You're gonna be like, okay, dude.
Well, you gotta ask what is the film trying to convey, and did they do that effectively?
I wanted more depth and nuance, is what I'm saying. But anyways,
I don't think that was the point.
And so I think like the style was good. I think like maybe some of the I think one could argue that some of the jokes have not aged well because like that
which jokes?
Some of the derogatory jokes about Summer in the beginning.
Sure.
Have not aged well because society has changed. Because I forget that sometimes this movie was 2009, and this was before a lot of the new movement and
it was before we went to college, dude.
Yeah, before, a lot of education around
what is acceptable.
Yeah, what's acceptable and what's not acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
I still recommend this movie because it's still the best rom-com. As you know, I don't really rate that genre very highly in general, so like
sure.
It's already gonna take a hit. But I'm gonna say some positive things now before I say my score is like. Acting's great. I thought like for the genre, it's one of the better ones. I can see why people revisit it and do analysis of the film of the Summer of Tom because it's like I said, very few rom-coms do that well at all, right? It's very like 2 people meet, there's a conflict, and then like they get married, right? It's like most rom-coms, right? Like there's a conflict of like, oh, he doesn't want to settle or down, or oh, she wants to go to what's this term? I forgot. I'm losing my train of thought. But like like she wants to go do a new job in Chicago or whatever, and then that's the conflict. I think for the audience, what I recommend if you really want to see like a more grounded, it's a longer form, but it's called Normal People. I think it's still on Hulu. That's like a I would give that like your score 9, 8.5. This film, I give it a 6.5 out of 10. I think it's solid, but it's not great. But like I'm gonna do a plug for normal people, and that's a show that I think does a little more deep depth and a little more like a little more exploration of how complicated relationships can be, and how like it can be, a relationship can both be good and bad, and it also could be a form to grow, like you said. So I think that was some of the things that this film was trying to do, but like there's
I don't think so. I think they're trying to dive into the perspective of the cliche of someone who's like an immature dude going and trying to learn through relationships.
Yeah, and maybe this is my bias, that when I was younger,
it is a bias though.
Yeah, when I was younger,
here's the thing. You were trying to like. This is my issue with your score. You're trying to say that the character needed to be more nuanced. I don't think so, because I think it's showing a certain point and sort of growth that people will go through when they go through certain relationships.
No, so to defend your point of view that I'm biased in my own way, is that like I think I would have rated this a lot higher 6 years ago, but now that I'm older and stuff, I just have less patience for this.
Well, no, I think what you're trying to say is like, and here's where the nuance comes. It was with the growth of Tom.
Yeah, I guess I grew up too, and I don't like the.
But that's my point. I think you would have liked the movie, or you probably would have rated the movie higher if they went on and showed like Tom in his next relationship.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Which I don't think is the point of the film. Which is why I have the issue with your score.
Well, let me be me. I gotta be me. So, as we know on this pod, like I'm a stickler. Like,
you moving the goalpost over here.
So for some movies, I move the goalpost, or others,
you move
other way. Like, greatest film of all time, because I bias.
Bro, like you have like the goalpost outside the stadium sometimes. I'm like, homie, it's not the point of the film.
But I can be swayed to 7. I'm gonna stick with 6.
Well, what I will say with your critique is they could have definitely dived into Summer's side a little bit more. That's, I think, a fair critique.
Yeah, I think it would have added some richness to the film. Like,
yeah, well, I mean, it's like you see it. It's like, and that's the whole point. They were trying to show just everything you're seeing is through the lens of Tom's perspective. I think it would have been a little more effective if they balanced out a little more and showed a little bit through like Summer's perspective.
Yeah, because I think like unless it's a really toxic relationship, I think what we tend to forget is that like.
Well, here's the thing. Oftentimes, it's like when you're in something or you just got out, it's like, screw it. It was always the other person's fault, and then you go and think, and you're like, actually, nah. Actually, I did this a little bit. I shouldn't. Like, if I look back at it, like I was being a jerk, or you do a little more self-reflection, you realize it's a little more murky than what you initially made it out to be.
It's never that cut and dry.
No, of course not.
So I would have been interesting what Summer found like weird or enduring, but also maybe bad about Tom. It would have been interesting to see too.
Sure.
We could speculate, but the film could have shown us a little bit of that. But yeah, I just I'm gonna stick with my guns. I have my principles. So
all right. Well, that's fair.
But yeah, it's still a recommended. Like I don't really recommend rom-com, so that's the greatest compliment I can give this film. Yeah.
All right. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think next week should be our next episode should be good. And
sounds good.
And cool. Yeah, please like and subscribe and leave any comments. I know we're slowly. I checked the stats the other week, and we're actually just right now we're trending the same. Like we get the same amount of views and clicks, and actually our recent upload has been uptaking recently. So I'm curious. So
which one?
Hotel Rwanda. So.
Oh, interesting. I wonder why that is, because oftentimes, like I feel like our whatever movies we review, it's kind of a reflection of something that's going on within like society or the world.
Yeah, so I'm curious too. So,
well, anyway, yeah, like my co-host said, if you enjoyed our commentary, please like and subscribe. Oh, the other thing I will add is if you have any suggestions for films you'd like us to review, please let us know in the comments. And yeah, and we'll see you next week. We're out.